Cameron Lee, producer on Dragon Age Inquisition at BioWare Edmonton.
So what did you learn from Dragon Age 2 that you carried over into Inquisition?
A lot of things. So first and foremost, the breadth of the story that we wanted to tell is very different from Dragon Age 2. In Dragon Age Inquisition, it's a much bigger story. So it's a story that spans 2 different nations, spans a lot of different physical environments as well, and it's a lot more epic in its the potential threats and conflicts and destruction that may come from it. So that's probably the biggest one. We also took some fan feedback as well on combat. So our players can play combat in Dragon Age Inquisition either in action or in tactical mode. And they can swap between those two at any time. But in the action side of things, we've slowed the combat down from Dragon Age 2. We've made every hit matter more, made it a lot more weighty. So that was another thing we definitely learned.
So in terms of the criticisms from Dragon Age 2, things like the recycled assets and stuff like that, was that a key? Obviously, it's now this huge kind of open world. Was that one of the key things that you wanted to fix, and is that why it's kind of more open world this time?
It's not why it's more open world. It's more open world because you need that amount of space and that amount of variation just to be able to tell the story that we want to tell. The story really does require that we go to things like swamps and deserts and snow-capped mountains and these creepy sort of forests and palaces. You know, it's really quite amazing the variety of locations. So we started off with a story. We always start off with a story. Like, what story do we want to tell? And then from there, it's like, what characters do we need? What locations do we need? What features do we need in the game? And so that's really what dictated what the game is going to be with Dragon Age Inquisition.
Obviously, BioWare are the king of choice and consequence.
Yes.
How have you ramped that up in Inquisition?
It's a good question. With a lot of hard work. There's a variety of things. So one, you can have impacts on the world and the NPCs and the wildlife in the world in these open world locations with the World Master system. So, for example, if I kill all the bandits in a particular area, another faction may come in and take its place. Or if I hunt some wildlife down, that may have other consequences as well. So that's your sort of moment-to-moment kind of impact. Narrative, which is what you're really talking about here, we've elevated that into the realm of more dilemma at this point. We wanted to have really strong branching decisions in the game, which were emotionally weighty to the players. So some of those branching pieces have exclusive content based on which decision you'll make. And for the first time, it's really cool because you can actually then go and see the consequence of you not making the other choice as well, which is badass. So there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of rippling effects that go through. So there's a lot of decisions now that will have an immediate payoff and then trickle on down the path. So that's really how we've been pushing it up for Inquisition.
One of the big words when I saw the presentation yesterday was influence.
Yes.
And how much of an influence you have on the world and how it grows. How exactly does that work? Because that sounds ridiculously complex.
Yes, so this is the glue, your influence and the Inquisition which you run as a leader is the glue by which we take open world gameplay and BioWare narrative and we bring them together. So for those who don't know, Dragon Age Inquisition is about you as a player being the leader of an organization called the Inquisition. It's full of spies and soldiers and merchants and political power, and you need to bring in people into this Inquisition as you go through the course of the game. And then by building influence, so closing fade rifts, doing certain quests, bringing in new factions into the Inquisition, that all allows you to then essentially spend that influence or utilize that influence that you've built up by sending out your agents on various operations. It could be operations like as simple as, hey, go and get me this rare crafting material, to go and repair this bridge so I can get access to a new part of the world that I haven't seen before, to this is a part of the story I want to go and see next. And so it's this big table with these big maps on it, and you can sort of zoom around and there's all these different flags. It's a war table. It's essentially what it is. So that influence is a big part of our game.
Is that one of the key goals then, just to have this kind of, is it a bit like Mass Effect's kind of war, they had a war room like that, is it a little bit like that, or is it more?
Oh, it's far more than that. It's I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It's really like if you imagine like a general, pushing markers around the map, right? It's kind of like that, but what you're doing is you're doing it with strategic assets and strategic influence that you've got. So you may zoom into a particular region of the world, say the hinterlands that you saw earlier on today or yesterday, and you'll see markers on there about different opportunities you've got to use your Inquisition. And then you send in your agents, and they can come back and say, well, I did it, and here's the result, and you can go into the world and you maybe see that result physically as well, which is incredible. The Frostbite engine has allowed us to do destruction in our combat encounters, which is amazing in and of itself, but it's also allowed us to do construction in some aspects as well, where you can actually physically change the world. There's a really cool operation that you can do in one area of the game, and you can bring down the water level of a dam and get access to other parts of the map then. And so that's the kind of physical impact that players can have in the world, as well as the story impacts that BioWare is known for.
Obviously, the open world brings with it mounts.
Yes.
And the word exotic mounts as well.
Yes.
Are we looking at more than just horses?
Yes, absolutely. We started off with horses, and then we looked at them and went, yeah, they're horses. We can do better than that. So we've got a variety of different ones. You can. There's this kind of a lizardy kind of creature, sort of like a scaled horse. It's kind of funky. My personal favorite is the Bog Unicorn. So it's this undead kind of blackened, shriveled horse. And it's a unicorn only because when someone killed it, they shoved a sword through its head. So its horn is a sword, right?
Nice.
So that's my favorite one. But there's a whole range of different ones that you can get through the game. And you have a castle as obviously the leader of a massive organization. So you've got a castle and you can grab your horses there. So.
Are we looking at dragons as well?
I wish.
No dragons, no.
No.
I guess that brings with it flight, right?
No,
which is a completely different thing.
Absolutely, it's a completely different thing. The dragons you're going to meet in Dragon Age Inquisition are these humongous, terrifying beasts. You would have seen them in the demo as well. They fly around, they breathe fire on you. You can now when you fight them, you can take out individual limbs, causing it to fall over, giving you access to attack its head before it gets up again. I think we've got around sort of 20 odd of these massive dragons in the game. They're all the high dragons. There's lots of other sort of dragon lean type creatures as well. So they're massive encounters and real challenges for the player to get through, because what we wanted to do with the game is we don't auto scale the enemies in the world. So if you come across a dragon and you're too low level, well, you're screwed, right? And there's plenty of other monsters that are just high level. There's giants and different trolls and all sorts of weird things, demons. So those are the sorts of creatures that you're going to encounter in the world, and we want people to feel like they're really exploring. So if they come across a cave, they should feel nervous going into that cave because you don't know what's going to be in there. And it also allows players to move through these massive open worlds, to come back to different areas and explore and go, well, maybe I'm high enough level now to take on that dragon. Let's see what's behind that dragon. So yeah, those dragons are pretty great, but no ride in them.
Yeah. Have you done anything to reward players who played Origins and 2?
So there's a couple of things. The decisions and actions and your character, if you did play the previous 2 games, those decisions will impact Dragon Age Inquisition. You don't have to play them. We spent a lot of time focusing on the prologue to make the pacing pretty simple so that new players can come in, they can get up to speed really quickly. We've kept all of the complexities of the story and the lore in the prologue as well, but we've pushed it off to the side so those hardcore fans can go in there and still get that. But yeah, we've worked a lot on the pacing of the original story to make it easier for fans to get in. And once we've gone through the prologue, then we'll open up the whole world to you. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. So different characters that you may have met in previous games will be in Dragon Age Inquisition. How you've dealt with them in the previous games may impact what they're like in Dragon Age Inquisition. So yeah, there's a lot of that sort of rewards for the old players. Is
that tricky to do across generations?
Incredibly hard. So,
how does that even work? I mean, are you using Origin to save the decisions? Or?
No, so what we're doing is we've built a new website called Dragon Age Keep. So it's an online tool, essentially. It's a narrated, animated experience. There's around 300 different decisions in this Dragon Age Keep. And so what you do is you go to Dragon Age Keep, you create your original character from the previous games, and then it will sort of walk you through some major decision points. And then you've got the option to drill down into all these different sort of 300 like choices and actions that you made, and you get as fine detailed as you want. And then when you start Dragon Age Inquisition, if you want to, you connect to that Dragon Age Keep, bring down that world state essentially, and that will immediately change the world of Dragon Age Inquisition based on what you've done in the previous games. You don't have to do it, but if you want to, it's absolutely there. So now people can go from PC to PlayStation 4, they can go from PlayStation 3 to Xbox One. So there's a lot of freedom now around what matters most for our fans, which is have my decisions kept having an impact on the game. Another cool thing with that is that any decision that you make through Dragon Age Inquisition, if you are connected to the internet, then it will go back up to the Keep. So there's one central spot for all things Dragon Age and all things about your particular Dragon Age.
So for future Dragon Ages, all the decisions are there forever,
Yep.
kind of thing then?
That's it, yep.
So in terms of so you have to remember all your decisions, or can you upload a save? How does that?
So we're still investigating whether we can do the save uploads. There's a lot of complexities and legalities around the different save files and different platforms and formats. So it's quite complex, so we're still looking into it. Right now the Dragon Age Keep is in beta, so we're getting a lot of user feedback to make sure that it's really easy to use. And also for new players that may even just want to check out the backstory of the previous games, is a really good way to do that, because like the major decision beats in the previous games they're narrated and animated with some text, so it's quite simple to get a good grip. But you don't need to remember everything, because the other cool thing that Keep will do, if you don't quite remember and you make some kind of incorrect decisions and all conflicting decisions, it will actually tell you, say, hey, you can't make this decision if you made this previous one up here. So it's quite intelligent about how we'll do it.
And the old classic characters, obviously we saw Liliani in the demo downstairs. Yep. Can we see a lot more of those characters? Is that how you're...
Absolutely. So there's a huge cast of returning characters from the previous games and lots of new characters as well. So Liliana is back, Morrigan is back, who's like a lot of people's favourites. Varric and Cassandra are back from Dragon Age 2. And there's a variety of other big returning characters that are not just followers, but just characters in the world that you're going to meet and interact with on a regular basis. The new characters that we have, like Iron Bull, he's that big mercenary Canary guy with the huge horns. He's a badass. Vivian, who's a mage. She's kind of like this Ice Queen kind of thing. She's almost like a polar opposite of Morrigan.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how those two sort of interact. Also we've got Sarah, who's the elf archer girl. She's really hard to demo for though normally, because she's so sort of like sassy and kind of like almost bitchy if you don't know who she is.
Yeah.
You know, she comes across really weird, and you hear her in demos and you're like, what was that? So yeah, great characters, and you get to interact with all of them, which is great, and they will interact with each other too. So not only can you build relationships and companionship and romances with these characters, but the characters will also do the same thing amongst themselves, so it's pretty amazing.